Welcome back to our channel. It is Eating Disorder Awareness Month, and we're so happy to be talking to Dr. Jen Gaudiani today. And she's an eating disorder specialist and doctor, and I'm so excited to have you here because we need your input, and I want to know a little bit about why you got excited about this field and why you pursued it as your life passion.
Thanks, Katie. I'm so lucky to be in this field. I'm an internal medicine doctor. And
what does that mean exactly?
So, great question. An internal medicine doctor basically takes care of everybody except pregnant people and people who need surgery.
Okay.
So we are doctors who take care of adults in anything that happens to the body.
Okay.
We tend to be super nerds who want to have our fingers in everything and take care of the whole person.
Okay.
So 8 years ago, when I joined Denver Health Medical Center, moving to Denver, I had the opportunity to get involved in the nation's only medical stabilization unit for adults whose eating disorders had gotten so critical that they couldn't receive care anywhere else.
Wow.
And I learned so much from my amazing patients and my wonderful colleagues. And then this fall, I left that program and started my own private practice in Denver. So fun, which is dedicated to people with eating disorders, disordered eating, or just a complicated relationship between their body and food of all genders, of all shapes and sizes. And I get to be their primary care doctor.
That's amazing, and I wanted to talk about something you just said. One of the things I talked about in my book is we were looking up statistics about eating disorders, and I found them to be very off-putting because I feel like it's very hard to get a realistic statistic when most people don't consider themselves to have an eating disorder. And so I want to talk to you about that because I work with girls, and I've actually had girls say to me, oh my gosh, when I was in high school, I used to throw up, but I didn't have an eating disorder. And I wanted to go, that's an eating disorder. So how do we start to educate people on what that is and what we consider a clinical eating disorder versus disordered eating? Because in my experience, all the women that I know have some form or have had some form of disordered eating.
That's a fantastic question. I think there's a couple things at play here. First of all, people with eating disorders often view themselves as being fine.
Right.
Even when they're not.
Right.
And part of the eating disorder voice, as I like to call it, says to them, you're not X enough, you're not Y enough, you're not sick enough, you're fine, keep going. I've seen people who are sicker. And so there's that part in their soul that just cries out to be validated, to say, this isn't okay, this isn't who you are. And so what I would say is there are clear diagnostic criteria in the DSM-5, which is the Manual of Mental Health Disorders. And that's how you formally diagnose an eating disorder. It's what the research studies use. But the fact is, Katie, that so many people have disordered eating that impacts their quality of life.
Yep.
It affects their dearest, nearest values. It affects their relationships and their trajectory in life. And you don't have to have a formal diagnosis to receive care and validation.
And what about the perception of an eating disorder being that you can't have an eating disorder unless you look like you're underweight and, ill? Other than that, I've seen a lot on social media and things where people that might be a fuller size, the people say, oh, you clearly don't have an eating disorder because you're not thin. So can we address that as well? Like, what does an eating disorder have a look?
Eating disorders come in all shapes and sizes.
Yep.
There is
So important.
not a shape and size that defines an eating disorder. And by the way, health comes in all shapes and sizes. And it's so important, weight stigma is such a terrible issue in this country, maybe on this planet. And the fact is that from a medical perspective, I've seen people who have critical medical complications of their eating disorder in the entire weight spectrum.
Yeah, that's so fascinating, I think, because we're so programmed culturally to think, this is another thing I think is so important to discuss, where we say, okay, we've got in our culture where an ideal that is underweight is being praised and valued above all else, especially in our social media culture, where we can manipulate photos, and the more we look like this ideal, the more love, validation, and attention we get. So how do we fight that with young girls that are looking at this to say, oh, well, I really want this love that I'm searching for, and culturally we're saying this is how you get it. And they do. Like, so this
They
is the
do.
problem.
Right.
They get the attention,
It's
they
a
get the
real
followers.
problem.
How do we start to fight that to say, wait a minute, this isn't the love we're looking for. This is momentary acceptance, momentary feelings of self, love, but it's not authentic. How do we teach that?
We're both moms, and we're both moms of girls. And one of the things that I think about a lot in my own parenting, and I try to bring this to my patients as well, is a sense of authenticity in my own body and a belief that fundamentally, if we eat a wide variety of foods and enough of them to sustain our needs, and we move for joy, our body is going to take on a shape and size that essentially is written in the genes.
Yeah.
And so we have to embrace what that is. I certainly encourage my patients to be caretakers of their bodies, not having to love their bodies.
Right.
Because love of your body is great. I recommend it. It's nice. But not everyone can get there. Not everyone's wired to get there. So rather
but don't you
than
feel like there's pressure to do that as well?
Oh, there's totally pressure.
I'm like, why, for me, one of the things that I see is I try to just like live, and I try to document that. Like, hey, this is my life. What I'm seeing is a culture developing on social media that everything is like my body, my body, my body. Like, even when it's body positive, but it's still an obsession with our bodies instead of like, hey, look at me, like enjoying my life. It's like, hey, look at me in this bikini, and I'm going to tell you I'm posting this because I love myself. Like, and it's this constant like obsession with our bodies. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure. And now I'm also seeing in the industry side that clients and advertising companies are like, oh, we can make money off of this.
Of course.
So I'm going to sell you your self-esteem in a positive way, and I'm going to highlight those stretch marks, and I'm going to do all of these things that are going to give you that shot of self-esteem for 5 seconds. And it's not something that's lasting. But how do we, identify authenticity is my question. Because, for example, this morning, I was like, I have to ask you this. So Bradford and I saw a post, and he brought it up actually. And it was a woman in lingerie. And she took a sexy picture next to a model in the same lingerie, and she was a larger woman. And she said, I'm posting this because I'm being brave, and I'm not normally comfortable showing myself, but I know I won't look like this model. And I see these posts like 9,000 times a day. And it's funny because we looked at her page, and there's like tons of pictures of her naked. So we're like, obviously you're comfortable being naked because you have tons of naked photos. So again, I see this like formula coming up where instead of women just saying, I think I look good in this picture, and I'm going to just post it because I think I look good, we have a disclaimer, which is, I'm posting this picture because I like it, I want to get comments on it, and it makes me feel good. But instead of being comfortable doing that, we have to say, almost like I'm a victim.
Yeah.
Like, I'm being brave by doing this, and it's all about my struggle. But I don't really feel like that's the case all the time.
Yeah, I certainly raise my hat to anybody who is willing to put themselves out there and be vulnerable. But you're right, there can be secondary gain in there.
Right.
I think when we come from a place of, what am I doing in my body for the world, for my family, in my community, intellectually, whatever it may be, rather than have the focus first be on purely body, because that's too superficial.
That you said don't get likes. And that's, again, coming back to the problem where we go, okay, if we post like good things we're doing for the community, we don't get the reaction that we want. So when I talk to young girls, when it comes to modeling, a lot of people don't know this, but girls have to have followers to even get to castings now.
Wow.
So certain clients, like even commercial clients, will say you can't come to the casting unless you have 10,000 followers because it's advertising. So there is this drive pushing models to post sexy photos because that is the thing that will get you followers quicker. But the effect that's having on the young girls that look at them, because it's not honest, we're not saying, hey, I don't want to post this picture, but I have to. I post this picture because I like my body. And now that's a trend. Yeah. So I would just love to see, more people talking about this, to say, I did it as well. And I subconsciously did it because I was like, oh, this is how I contribute to this positive movement. Now I feel like I've evolved past that in a way to go, oh, how do I contribute in real life? Like, these followers they're not real people. Like, and my husband brought this up too, he goes, if you have a flat tire on the freeway. How many of your followers are going to come help you? You know, you need real life friends. You need real life connections. And I think that in the youth, in the girls that I work with, that's what they're missing the most.
Well, one of the reasons they may be missing it is because they don't have a safe space to occupy their body where no one is judging.
Right.
And as a mom, I think about telling my daughters, we don't talk about bodies in my house. I don't talk about what my body is doing. I don't talk about other people's bodies, positively or negatively. When they see me work out, it's mommy's getting strong so she can play and have energy to enjoy you. And food is never bad, it's never good. It's fuel, and we enjoy it together, and when our tummies are full, we stop. So I think that when girls don't grow up in a culture where they have a safe space to exist judgment-free in their bodies, maybe they go looking for places where approbation exists, where you do get likes. I want them to get liked for how beautiful they are, but I also want them to get liked for how smart they are, how kind they are, how generous they are, how insightful they are.
And that should be also in the definition of beauty, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, and I had people say too, like, oh, your daughter's so beautiful. Is she going to be a model? And I'm like, see, that to me is so crazy that we put this expectation on girls, like, because I want her to feel beautiful. And, you know, there's that other side where people are like, I'm not going to tell my daughter she's beautiful because I don't want her to get an ego. My grandmother, that's her understanding of it. And we're like, why are we denying them beauty? Like, it's so extreme. Everything is so extreme. So I guess, like, that's what I'm looking forward to figuring out. And I think that's what we're all trying to figure out and why it's so great to have these conversations, because it's just about trying something different and knowing, like, even if it doesn't get likes, but it's true to who you are and it makes you feel good, that's enough. And I've really been challenging myself more, and having my daughter really helped me to shift away from posting like work photos, because models don't think of that as the same thing, and that's important for people to understand. Girls look at models' pages and think, ooh, their lives, but we look at it like, oh, I have to post this work photo. Right. But it's not who we are. So there's a disconnect there as well that girls really need to understand, that modeling is just a job. It doesn't make you a better person, it doesn't make you love yourself. But when it comes to this skinny model prototype and ideal, there is this side that you are getting rewarded for being unhealthy. Yeah. So how do you fight that when you talk to young girls when they do get rewarded in our culture?
You know, first I validate it and I say, you're right. I'm not going to try to say that that's not happening. But I say, if you're sacrificing who you are, if you're compromising your health in order to achieve a thin ideal that may not be right for you genetically or in your ethnicity or anything else, just in how you're built, then what are you doing it for? Find likes from people who deeply care about who you are as a human in your own unique version of your beauty. And don't sacrifice, because the fact is, eating disorders kill. Anorexia nervosa carries the highest death rate of any mental illness.
Wow.
And half of those deaths are from suicide, because anorexia is so intolerably miserable. And these are amazing, sensitive, gorgeous, hard-working, brilliant young women and men. So the fact is, there's not a lack of downside to flirting with disordered eating, because maybe you'll get to be one of the lucky ones and you'll simply play around with food and body a little and then grow out of it. But the risk is that you're playing roulette, that you might end up with something that sticks with you for a decade or two, and you lose your friends. I mean, talk about losing friends and what it is to be connected. So many of my patients talk about connectedness with others as being a top value, but their eating disorder will only let them connect with it. It's a jealous, mean partner. So,
but do you think that comes back to what we teach girls they deserve on some level? I think on a deep level, we teach girls, like, you don't deserve good things, so it's almost natural for us to accept that instead of deny that when that creeps in as a youth, because we're not grown up, we don't grow up in these healthy homes with balance and love and like all of these things that we would expect you to grow up with. And so when that presents itself, we say, oh yeah, why wouldn't I accept this?
That's right. I think that's so wise. And so it's up to us as a community of women to support each other and to put goodness out into the world. You're putting goodness out into the world that helps people. the more that people can resist putting out the superficial, the mean, the comparison, the comparing, the more that they're actually able to create a safe space in their social groups for people to focus on different things. Yes, beauty, but all the other things too.